Men wanted for hazardous journey. Small wages, bitter cold, long months of darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, honor and recognition in case of success. This was an ad posted by Ernest Shackleton back in 1914. In order to recruit people, I think we got 5,000 people that came out to do a trans-Antarctic expedition. And they got stuck in the ice, and they had to stay out there for 2 years, and it's a well-known story. But the reason I bring it up is this is how a lot of people think of space travel today. If you imagine an ad for an intern, it would say something like, intern wanted for radiation study, and then the rest would be the same. So why do I bring this up? Well, there are other examples like this one. Charles Lindbergh, and a year later, Amelia Earhart flew across the Atlantic. Then in 1961, Yuri Gagarin orbited the Earth. And in 1969, Apollo landed on the moon. All very intrepid and perilous undertakings that were done successfully. But if you look back at some of these earlier ones, well, traveling across the ocean today, the biggest concern is whether the buffet runs out of shrimp. And if you're traveling in an airplane across the ocean, you're really concerned about whether the plane's on time, you're concerned about how comfortable the seats are, whether you're getting air miles or not, but you're not concerned about real danger. But when it comes to space today, we're still concerned about real danger. And that's the perception issue we have to deal with. We have to think about what people are thinking about when they think of space and start to address that. Now, if you imagine the Wright brothers in 1905 or 1910 proposing that to some investors that they would build an aircraft that would carry 400 people and be made of 1 million parts and it would land in the middle of cities reliably, they would have probably laughed at the Wright brothers at that point in time and said, you're nuts. At the same time, there was this euphoric enthusiasm about building the Titanic, same number of parts, even bigger, and obviously a very perilous endeavor, but they were willing to invest in that. So if you think about the mentality of investors, they are willing to put a massive amount of money behind something provided they believe in it. And that's the secret here, is to get them to believe in it. So that brings us to some criteria for what it takes to get people to believe in a big idea. So I think there's really 2 key criteria. One of them we're very familiar with. It's the engineering and architect type criteria. You know, we have to believe that we can build it and it's safe. The people in this room are very good at that. And there's another kind of criteria, which is very, very perhaps equally important. Investors have to believe that it will generate a return on their investment. So the engineers are usually thinking what, how, where, these kinds of questions, and the investors are thinking why, also where, but a different kind of where, and when. So engineers, we think, what does it look like? How does it work? How is it built? Where can it take us? And where should it be built? Investors are asking, why should it be built? Is it safe? Why would people want to go there? How high should we build it? And when should we invest in this project? Now, if you think about all these questions together, it starts to change your thinking as an engineer. It's very important to keep supply and demand in balance. If you think about the demand for access to space really, really far away, it's not very much demand. It doesn't justify an elaborate infrastructure because not very many people want to go there. So Mars, for example, is an example of a destination where we're not going to build an elevator Mars because it just doesn't make sense. Not enough people want to go to Mars today. But closer in, just a little bit off the Earth, there's clearly demand. And I'm going to show you kind of how that's already happening today. So this is a diagram that's kind of like an Eiffel Tower. And it represents access to space. And I include in the space here airspace, just anything above the ground. And if you think about it, we've got at the bottom skyscrapers and air traffic. So as you work out, you've got what I call space scraper real estate. And then suborbital transport and tourism, space industries, and science. This one's very healthy, at the bottom. Space industries are reasonably healthy, but there's clearly room for growth. And I think space science is also healthy. We just flew by Pluto, for example. But also enormous growth potential there. But then the stuff in the middle isn't so healthy, and it's part of the structure, this Eiffel Tower shaped structure that needs to grow fatter in order for us to get higher into space as a species. So the question is, how does this healthy industry out here do it, and why doesn't this industry do it too? We start thinking about how this industry does it, and we'll start getting some ideas that affect our engineering forms. So let's look at the bottom part, the skyscrapers. Now clearly the airline industry, everybody understands it's healthy, and they understand why that makes money. People don't think as much about skyscrapers. Investors are putting a huge amount of money into skyscrapers. Think about, they even build cities like Dubai, and they put huge skyscrapers in Dubai. And they rent out this real estate for enormous amounts of money. And the reason is, after I studied this, the reason is that it actually improves job retention. When people buy floor space in these companies, they can hire people, and they don't turn over as much because they're really proud of their jobs and their prestigious trimmings, I guess. Their nest is nice, so they like the job and they stay. And this saves companies an enormous amount of money, and so they're willing to pay extra for this floor space, believe it or not. That's what this Global City Skyscrapers 2014 report says anyway. In the high end of the spectrum, you've got real estate selling for, or leasing for $250 per square foot per year, which doesn't sound like very much, but it's just a square foot. So on a larger scale, that's quite a lot of money. In the lower end, you've got smaller amounts of money, but all these skyscrapers are clearly making a lot of money. And investors are clearly happy to go and build huge projects like this and throw lots of money at them because they see the economics working. So then we have to think about what are the criteria we want to have in order to go to the next level up. So we're getting above airplanes and above skyscrapers and going to the higher space. We need some new criteria to think about how we meet those criteria. So I've got 3 slides on criteria. First one is pretty simple. If we think about putting people too far into space, they're going to get sick from space radiation. And so we don't want to do that because we want a lot of people to go to space and not get sick. So until the medical technology on Earth improves, we have to consider locations that are still somewhat protected by Earth's magnetic field, by the atmosphere, by the Earth itself, protecting us from the sun at least half the day. It has to be safe. Whatever we build has to be safe. And obviously rockets don't meet that criteria. It has to be fast and convenient to access this facility, whatever it is. So that means it shouldn't really be too far away, or if it is far away, we'd be able to get to it very quickly. Good transport. It has to support an establishment with ample floor space. Because when people go to a place like Dubai or Vegas, they want a lot of things to do, and you need a lot of floor space to satisfy that requirement. So that includes, the opulent furnishings, the beautiful views everyone's from the window, attractions, rides, day trips, all those kinds of things that you would get in a big city. And in general, it has to compete favorably with big cities on a variety of metrics, such as air quality, climate, crime rates, serenity, health and safety, even traffic, getting around the facilities, be convenient and easy. Well, that's a tourism type criteria or floor space criteria. Another kind of criteria is related to supporting other industries. So if we think about a space-based industry being supported by an infrastructure that we want to create, well, we need to nurture that industry somehow. And we need to choose a disruptive industry to nurture. So I've got some examples here. I'm not sure these are great examples, but a low Earth orbit deployed emergency services might be a big industry. If you have ambulances floating around in space that can quickly get to various destinations and they displace other ambulances. Crazy idea, but maybe that would be an example of a disruptive industry. Or delivery, like imagine Amazon delivering whatever you ordered online to your house in 30 minutes using a drone that re-enters the atmosphere or something. Another crazy disruptive idea, but maybe not a great idea. It really depends. But asteroid mining is an example that perhaps has precedent history, which is very interesting. In the late 1800s, aluminum was more precious than gold. It was very hard to get, very hard to produce. Got a hand up.
Didn't Napoleon, I think at one point had, because it was just so rare, he had a silverware made out of aluminum just so he could say, oh, I have the rarest.
That's very, very possible. I didn't know that.
It's true.
That's true, yeah. Anyway, so Hull, Herold, these are two people, Hull and Herold, these are two people independently invented this process on different continents. One was around Chicago, I think, and the other one was in France. They invented this electrolytic process which converted aluminum from minerals into metal very quickly using electricity. And that completely changed the dynamic. The metal became affordable and it displaced other metals because it was light and cheap and had all these valuable properties. And now it's ubiquitous. We use it in Coke cans. So huge disruptive technology, but way back in history. Similarly, we could do something like that today. We can displace another very large metal by going to the asteroids and cheaply obtaining a replacement metal that's expensive to us now from the asteroids and bringing it back to Earth. That would be disruptive industry. And if we can simply remove the cost of getting to and from low Earth orbit, that industry could take over. So that's another kind of criteria that would drive things forward. Oh, I should have mentioned the innovator's dilemma. The innovator's dilemma is failing to observe that a disruptive technology is going to happen and staying focused on the day's problems too long and then having this disruptive technology take you by surprise and put you out of business. In a sense, we are doing that right now. We are too focused on the problem of getting a kilogram of mass into orbit. That is yesterday's problem. We need to focus on the problem of how does humanity begin to migrate into space. That is the bigger problem, and that's the opportunity. If we start thinking along those lines, we're going to have a better chance of having a successful infrastructure. Hang on a second. All right. One more interesting criteria. This is the harnessing the value of significant perceptual change. What does this mean? Well, carbon emissions could be reduced if we can convince enough people to care for the planet. A lot of people make different decisions if they actually went up in space and looked down at the planet and saw it for what it was, with its thin layer of atmosphere that's like a fuzz on a peach. That's game-changing perceptions. There's a documentary called Overview. It was made a few years ago, and I recommend you all watch it. It's a lot of people who have been to space talking about how it changed their perceptions and their feelings about the Earth. Very compelling video. All we have to do to harness this is develop what I call sociological proof that's believable to investors, that if you put enough people into space, it's going to change the climate, and then you can sell carbon credits, assuming something like a Kyoto Accord eventually comes into play for that technology. So you probably get a lot of money for that process to fund a pilot of this. So these are three kind of basic ideas for why we should do something and where we should do it. So the question is, what do we do it with? What architecture can meet all of these criteria? Let's get this on my laptop. Do you have hooked up with speakers? They said it would work, but
Hold your microphone back.
yeah, that's true. If you like the music, because my son actually made this music. So. This is what I call a stayed bearing. This part here, this ring, or this is the bearing, and these are states. Now I'm going to explain a little more how this works because I've had some experience with people, so I just didn't understand that at all. So I'm going to go through some more detail in a second. But what I wanted to say before I go on to that is that that image was rendered with all the components being over 1,000 times thicker than they actually are, just so you can see them in the video and the picture. In reality, if you were standing on Earth, looking up at 45 degrees of this thing, it would be no thicker than a spider web seen from about a meter away. So it's rather thin and small and light compared to what the video and the picture shows. Some technical specs on it quickly. Its circumference is going to be 20,000 kilometers. It would support over 1 billion kilograms of mass. Sounds like a lot. It's not actually. It would support about 250,000 inhabitants. Each one would get about 148 square feet. Now this is just what I would call a preferred embodiment. You could say like a set of parameters that I picked. You can scale a lot of things with this idea, but I picked these numbers as just a starting point. And I encourage anybody to sort of suggest other alternatives. But by comparison, right now there are 660,000 people in the air. Just to get an idea, these people are being held up by dynamic structures called the aeronautical airline industry. So we can certainly keep those people up most of the time anyway. I think we can sort of keep up more people in a different structure. Now, if we leased out the amount of floor space that I'm describing here, it would generate, if we leased it out at the high rates of the buildings that are built in the biggest cities, it would actually generate $9.25 billion a year just on floor space leasing. Not to mention other services and things people might pay for in taxes. All right, so how does it work? So first I want to introduce a very simple concept. This is a simplistic diagram. We have a ring. Imagine this is a solid, rigid ring, and like a bicycle wheel. And there's two spokes attached to the ring and attached to a hub. So if you pull on the two spokes, right, then the ring goes up. And that's where I need my volunteer. So just to visualize this, take this globe and flip it upside down. So you're looking at it upside down. You've got Antarctica at the top. And imagine we have a ring which is solid. So this is a big ring, but I'm going to make a small one out of this piece of metal. Something like this, right? You're going to put that over the top around Antarctica. And you're going to connect stays between the edge of this small ring and points that are further up on Antarctica. And you're going to tension them. Now keep in mind the ring is rigid, it doesn't flex. We're going to tension them until the ring lifts off the ground, just like it did in that video. Okay, put your hand down now, okay? But I want to watch you sweat. But the next thing you have to think about is the forces in this sort of vision, the forces of gravity are pointing towards the floor, but on the planet they'd actually be pointing inwards towards the planet. So you have to imagine now the force of gravity on this ring is pointing towards the planet, but it still stays up because the ring is still rigid. Then you can turn the planet back upside down, and now you've got in your mind the same image from the slide, the previous slides where we had the ring underneath the Earth. Now the ring itself, the bearing I call it, is obviously not going to be rigid mechanically enough to stay, stop from falling apart. So it is a dynamic structure. It does have inside a mass stream moving around, which I just consider to be another ring of the bearing. So it spins around very quickly and it generates centrifugal forces, which hold the bearing, keep the bearing circular and maintain its rigidity. So that's this figure here. So we've got the Earth, the ring, which is this dot, and you can see it's disappearing behind the planet. You've got a stay connecting the ring and an anchor point on Earth, and of course there's many of these. And the ring inside has a secondary ring or rings that spin, and they're levitated magnetically probably, or some other force, and they would generate a centrifugal force. These three forces, the force of gravity, the centrifugal force of the ring, and the tension of the stay, all are in equilibrium, and that's what keeps the ring up. There's a closer view of it. All right, so I also have a simulation. You can position the ring at different spots. You move the ring down the lower latitude, then the forces become smaller, the centrifugal force doesn't need to be as big, the force of the stays doesn't need to be as big to counter the force of gravity. As you move the ring towards the South Pole, then the forces increase, but they still can cancel out. So the advantage, of course, is the closer you go to the South Pole, the smaller your ring is, probably the cheaper it is to build, but you need to higher engineering forces to make it work. As you go away from the South Pole, your ring becomes bigger and therefore more expensive, but the forces you need to bring into balance are a little bit smaller, which makes it more feasible from an engineering perspective. The stays are interesting, especially to this group, because you're all interested in space elevators and carbon nanotubes. So these stays also have to be very strong, just like the space elevator stay. but not as strong as we've seen is needed for practical space elevator based on the tether and geosynchronous orbit mass. So they're much lower than those requirements, but still potentially above what's available today in technology. I would say about five times stronger than what we can do with carbon fiber. However, there is more tolerance for individual state failure. Obviously, if one breaks, it's not a big deal, whereas in a space elevator, if one breaks, that's the whole shebang. What I think will actually happen if we start thinking about how to build this is we'll actually think about how to support the stays aeronautically. Like I said, we keep 660,000 people in the air every day. So if we can do that with an aeronautics industry, it seems feasible that we should be able to support some wires aeronautically as well in a reliable manner. And if we do that, we can effectively lower the density of the material through buoyancy or through aeronautic means. And that fundamentally changes its specific strength. So buoyed stay is another form of high specific strength material, which we can actually use today. And I think that like a fleet of drones potentially could be brought to service to do something like buoy these stays and reduce the costs further. And I think we'd have faith in them because we have faith in the aeronautics industry. So where should it be built? The best location, I think, is around Antarctica because there's ocean around Antarctica. You can basically deploy it in the ocean. You don't have to deal with right-of-way, land acquisition, zoning permits that other infrastructure projects like rails have to deal with, so that will bring the cost down and make it more feasible to start a project. Also, when you deploy it in the ocean, you can use some of those ships that are deploying oil pipelines today. They're probably going to be out of work soon. So you take those ships, you load parts of the cable onto them, and you deploy it in the ocean. And you can put it underwater so that icebergs and other ships can travel over it initially, get it working, test it. Even, for example, you could take a cannon and shoot micrometeorites at it while it's in operation under the ocean to see if you break it or not, and make sure it's designed to be robust to those kinds of things. When you finally test it enough, then you start tensioning those stays that I talked about and pull it up out of the ocean. You remove what I call a dry dock sheath, be built around it to keep it safe from the ocean. Once it's out of the ocean, you remove that, you add fittings such as habitats and winching mechanisms and transport systems while it's still low, close to the Earth. And then you just keep winching those cables, winching those stays in, and accelerating the ring, keeping those forces in balance to raise it up until it's at the edge of the atmosphere, and it becomes a good tourist destination or a good place for a launching facility to be placed, for example. Everybody likes to talk about winds. It's like, what about the winds? I actually look at winds as an opportunity. This is a really good video done by NASA, and it shows, if I actually had the video running, you'd see all these winds swirling around. In reality, the strongest winds are actually created by the polar ice cap cooling the air. It cools the air, which then starts flowing down the polar ice cap like a river towards the coast. And it picks up a lot of speed because it's quite cool. And as it spills into the ocean, it can actually hit speeds of only 60 miles an hour. I propose that you could put wind turbines there and collect that power and use it to power the ring. The actual wind speeds further up, above this layer of river-like air, are actually much slower. This river-like air is only about 1,400 feet high. And you could probably build towers for anchors that would be above that if you wanted to. The rest of the air is more normal in nature. And as I said, if you come up with a design that supports your stays aeronautically, then I think you probably end up harvesting some of this airflow to actually levitate the stays, at least at lower altitudes. And again, reduce the amount of high specific strength materials you need to make them work. Now we get to the ring. This is basically just another small space elevator that gets you from the ground to the ring and back. Here's a little depiction of some of the facilities and transportation. Very simplistic, cartoony kind of thing, but like the Jetsons. But I wanted to show that there's various facilities hanging from the ring, and they're spaced out so that the load on the ring would be even. And they would have, connecting them, a transportation system. The transportation system is going to be above the atmosphere, so it could travel between individual facilities very quickly. And it could also accelerate any sort of payload or cargo to a higher speed where it would be detached and it could go into orbit, or it could be on its way to an asteroid to collect minerals. So So this system could theoretically provide a lot of services. All right, so, oh yeah, adversity, this is a fun topic. So all the things that can go wrong, right? I remember somebody was just mentioning that it would be really good to get Hollywood to make a movie about what we're doing here. I'm not so sure. I have a feeling they would make a disaster flick out of it. It would be a lot of fun to destroy our creations in the movies. But let's think about this. So space radiation is a major concern for people wanting to go to space, but this facility is not that high up. It's still within the last traces of atmosphere, still protected by Earth's magnetic fields, still close enough to the Earth that half the time at least you're going to be protected from the sun. So people are particularly concerned about it could visit it during the night, and other people would visit it during the day, I guess. Space debris is not too much of a concern at these altitudes because it tends to deorbit, because there's a little bit of residual atmosphere that slows it down. So it gets one chance to strike, but for the most part will not hang around and take multiple passes. A larger impactor can be avoided just by manipulating the tension of the stays or speeding up the ring. There's a variety of ways to move the ring if you think something's coming on a trajectory to hit it. A really large impactor, we actually had some fun with this idea. My son came up with the idea that you could actually separate the outer casing of the ring, exposing the inner fast-moving ring. And that if a large meteorite were to come towards this ring, it's spinning fast enough that it would be like a bandsaw. It could actually cut the meteorite in half, in theory, as this asteroid went through it. I would love to see the study that says that's possible. But I thought that was an interesting idea. Now, mind you, after it passes through the ring, gets cut in half, it's still going to destroy the planet, so it's kind of an academic exercise, but I thought it was an interesting analysis. I think the biggest threat is still perceptual. People thinking it's a dynamic structure and not thinking about the dynamic structure that we already have in the air today, the airplanes, and how well they work, and thinking that this is a dynamic structure that wouldn't work. But I think it will. One of the big advantages of this structure compared to other structures that are dynamic, other dynamic structures tend to stay up by taking forces and transferring them through the inertial objects down to the ground. So that these fast-moving, precision-guided bolts or pellets or whatever are taken from high up and then put down to the ground and then taken back up again repeatedly, and they're moving very fast. So these structures are vulnerable to any terrestrial dangers, such as earthquakes or really bad weather or potentially anomalous air traffic. Any of these things can be a threat to a precision-guided mass stream. So that's a danger, a perceptual danger, perhaps, associated with other technologies. Whereas this technology, the fast-moving components that are precision-guided are all up high in the high above the atmosphere, where they're not going to be subject to terrestrial threats. I have a whole slide on other research we could do if we're interested in this idea, things that would support this kind of concept. But obviously the technologies that we're discussing today, carbon nanotubes, stronger stays, all these things are very interesting for this type of technology as well. So let's see how I did here on covering all the questions. So cover what does it look like, how does it work, how is it built, did you cover that? Where can it take us, and where should it be built? All these things were covered. These were engineering questions. And then the investor questions. Why should we build it? Well, I gave 3 reasons for that. Cover them in the summary. Is it safe? I think it's safe. That if you think about what would happen if it fell out of the sky, I think it's possible you could add a sort of recovery system like parachutes to have it gently land back in the ocean. The stays themselves, if they remained attached, would probably slow it down quite a bit. Its terminal velocity wouldn't be that high. I think it's relatively safe from the point of view of if a few stays break, it's still going to be fine. It's going to stay up. How high should we build it? This is a question of convenience, space radiation, whether we can tolerate being higher or not, whether there are higher views, that kind of thing. So that's a question for some study to decide how high. It doesn't have to be very high. It doesn't have to be like way up there. And then the very important question is, when should I invest in this project if I'm an investor? So invest when you think the costs have come into equilibrium with the anticipated return. So when you think there's going to be a return on your investment, essentially, that's when you start investing. And so if we think about where that money's coming from, and we think about how much it's going to cost to provide that benefit, I think we're getting pretty close here with the technology we've got we could actually go to an investor and say, hey, time for you to cough up billions of dollars, and you'll see your money come back in a few years. We also have, of course, to solve the technical challenges that remain, and there are a few. All right, so the main takeaways, we're almost done. I'd like to ask everybody to sort of envision the evolution of space travel when they think about space infrastructure. Not think about yesterday's problems, but think about how, for example, ships evolved and how airplanes evolved, and then think similarly about how space travel will evolve. Keep the supply and demand side of the equation in balance. So think about if you have a place where people are likely to go in mass, you're going to get more demand, more supply to that location. So lower altitudes are going to be more in demand, like that Eiffel Tower diagram I showed earlier. And we want that Eiffel Tower to grow fatter and higher in order to have more migration into space. And to do that, we need more at the bottom. Thinking about space-based industries, think massively disruptive industries. And yeah, asteroid mining example I gave is a good one. If you can replace the use of an entire metal on Earth with something you can get from space, that's massively disruptive. And think about our huge global problems, such as global warming, as an opportunity for collecting revenue. If we can solve a portion of global warming with this technology by bringing people into space and changing their perceptions, then that's actually worth a lot of investment if you can make the right sociological argument, and if there's a mechanism such as carbon credits to get that money, get that benefit turned into cash. So that actually might be the single largest return on investment. If we can pass a healthy planet onto our kids because we built something like this, that would be a crowning achievement of the century. Thanks.
Questions? All right.
I just got one. How high is your projected the place where everybody lives? How high?
Yeah, so I modeled this at 80 kilometers.
Okay, thank you.
And I think you could put it at lower altitudes, honestly, but I like higher altitudes because it means that your transportation system is going to be faster getting around the ring, so you feel more connected to everybody in the ring, and because you'll be able to use it to launch things into space more easily if you get above the atmosphere. But lower is good if you want to convince people that they should live there and not worry about space radiation. So it's kind of a balance that we have to find out what the optimal altitude actually is. Mechanically, it can go higher. Yes?
I understand the concept, but what you didn't talk about, or else I missed it, was how people would get there and how they get back from there to the surface.
Yeah, so I had a small video there where I had a small space elevator. So I imagine a cable being dropped down from the edge of the ring. So you imagine this ring here, the cable dropping 80 kilometers to the surface of the Earth. And there would be a base airport there, like maybe built on a barge. And people would fly to the barge and then hop on the elevator and go up and down. And the elevator would be based on the same technologies that we're using for the space elevator today, but it would just use a less strong material.
Just to follow on to that, I spent a year at the South Pole, and I have been all around Antarctica in the waters. The typical wave size there on a normal day is 20 feet.
So you're saying that an airport can't be built in the oceans of Antarctica?
Tough.
It's tough. Okay, I don't deny there might be a few engineering challenges.
Just asking about, you said elevator cable 20 kilometers. You will need new materials. At the moment, elevator cables go up about 40 stories and then they have to change to a different elevator because the cables aren't strong enough. So you will need some significantly stronger.
So you're not saying it can't be done, are you?
I'm just saying you'll need stronger materials.
I think-
You were saying you could do it with existing materials.
Yeah, no, I think we're going to need stronger materials, just not as strong as we need to build a space elevator all the way up to geosynchronous orbit. I think this is a stepping stone opportunity to use some of these materials before they get to the maturity required for the big space projects. You could use them in this scale and say there's a good reason to justify investors give me some money because this is where they're going to be used in the short term.
Another question was, have you got any estimates of cost?
I would say not really very good estimates of cost yet. That's one of the things I decided not to work on, of all the things I did work on. So I did estimate the floor space based on a cost formula. I said, for the amount of mass we can hold, and given the technology the airline industry uses to build airplanes, how much floor space can you get? And that's how I came up with the numbers for floor space. And if you assume that you're going to spend that much money on the floor space, the same amount the airlines spend on their airplane fuselages, it's going to be expensive. Like, same floor space as an airplane. But that was a very conservative estimate. Airplanes are strong, have to handle turbulence. I don't think we have quite as strong stringent requirements. They do have hold pressure, but I figured it'd be similar in cost to 144 times a quarter of a million square feet of airplane space. So a good way to look at it is probably the same cost as all the airplanes we've built so far.
So has any been, sorry, has any been validated with any sort of real estate people? I'm just trying to imagine, first of all, is there any precedence in the sort of space real estate area? And secondly, then, has the idea sort of been validated by any real estate investors? And it seems out of this world.
Yeah, the nearest precedent I think we've got right now is Dubai. So why would you want to go to the desert and hang out in Dubai? There's nothing there. It's no more exciting than space with nothing there.
So I just flew in from there yesterday or the day before. They have a very good reason why. I mean, they care about their country and they care very much about the future of their country. And they know the oil's running out, and they know that they want to build a destination. It is a central hub. I mean, the airplanes all around that side of the world will go through there. So and now it's in Abu Dhabi, I've been in Dubai, and I've seen what they're doing there. It is incredible, but it's a very specific problem to a very specific area of the world where they want to invest in something they care about. This, you're trying to take that from a leap to a pure profit margin, invest in this most unbelievable thing that's going to bring you back. But I didn't see the profit benefits here. It wasn't clear from what you were sort of saying. And again, it's worrying when cost isn't really a factor because it's not. When it comes to real estate, people really want to see where the benefits are going to be. Why would somebody want to live, up high above the freezing cold Antarctic?
Right. So there was three ideas there that would generate some profit. One was the floor space idea, which I said would not take off until you reach a critical mass where there's enough floor space to have essentially something like Vegas or Dubai in terms of facilities and reasons to go there. That'd be an exciting place to go. The idea of being able to make a disruptive space-based industry happen is another fundamental source of huge amount of capital. But the proposal has to be there. Somebody has to say, this metal can be found on asteroids, and if we could just reduce the cost of getting into space, there's enough flow of money there to make it worth investing in the project. And then if you could harness carbon credits, it's a third mechanism. Now, I haven't done the math on any of these things to say for sure that we could fund the cost of the project. I don't know what the cost of the project would be. But I think if we're thinking big, we need to think about big sources of funding. And I think those sources of funding are possible candidates, and the cost of this project is lower than the cost of other projects because it takes you to an interesting destination that's closer to Earth. So it has a higher probability of coming to reality than perhaps other architectures that have been considered.
Any more questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.